Thanks everyone for joining our security talk at Signal 2016 this year. My name is Coleen and I lead Twilio Security. Can I get a show of hands of which of you are running security at your own company, on a security team, or get stuck with the security work at your security? Okay, yeah. Oh, it's a lot of you. This talk is for you. All right. When we were considering different topics for Signal this year, we kept coming back to a few different things. What we've been observing with our customers, advice that customers have been coming to us and asking us, and what's happening in the industry. Today, we're going to give you an overview of security at Twilio, so that'll be fun. And then we're going to concentrate on seeing some things that you can do in your own environment to secure what you have. When we started building our security program here, we wanted to focus our resources wisely. And for many of you here who are running security at your own company, you know that you can't secure everything all at once. It's just not possible. You don't have the time, the money, the resources, etc. So if you're to succeed, you have to use a phased approach. This is especially true if you're a small company or a startup. We know that this is our case. So if you're also a small company, chances are you're trying to solve many of the same problems that we have had to solve. And you can start by focusing your attention on the most dangerous security issues that you have, the ones that you consider to be company ending. And so you can think a minute about company ending risks. They're swirling in your head. You're the one charged with security. Okay. It's not that scary because every company has to do what you're doing. So when you do this exercise, this risk-based approach, what you find is that the themes that these things have common, like you can start grouping them into programs. And that makes it a little bit more doable because then what you can do is you can put good leaders in charge of each one of these programs. Then that way, the 5, 10, 15 huge things in cloud security or security monitoring that need to get done, they can get done because you have somebody good and experienced leading it and pushing it through. But that's not all. How many of you have been somewhere where you had the plan, you told everybody what needed to be fixed, and then you go to fix it, and you don't get the support that you need to? Previous companies. That's what I'm raising my hand for. Previous companies. That's why I'm at Twilio. So the most important thing that you can do, so besides getting your themes into programs and getting people heading up those programs, you have to get executive support. Spend time with your executives. Break down what you do so it's meaningful for them, because otherwise they're not going to understand it and they're not going to fund it. And the worst thing for security people and really technical people overall is that they don't have the understanding, support, funding, and resources to get stuff done. When they can't get stuff done and they're security people, they're going to leave your company. You do not want that. So make them happy, get that executive support, and then they can buy what they need to buy, they can hire who they need to hire, and run through their program. All right, so no matter where you happen to be on your security maturity plan, and we're at a certain spot, we'd like to be more mature always, but there's activities that we can do and you can do in each one of your most important programs that you've identified right away. You can bring immediate value. In order to illustrate some of these points that we have, we're going to tell a story, and we're going to be able to show you how all the pieces fit together and be slightly more entertaining than, maybe we were 5 years ago. And this is a story of it's a compilation of compromises that have happened to customers in the industry. It's not the story of one customer per se or of Twilio. It's just an example. Earlier I mentioned having good leaders for these security programs. So security is hard. It's sometimes not fun, other times very gratifying, and you have very good leaders to lead those programs. And on stage we have 3 helping us out to tell this story. So I'd like to introduce them really quick. First one is Charles Wave, Security Monitoring and Incident Response. That's the program he leads. And David Wave, he leads Application Security, which is a really great program we have as well. And finally, last but not least, we have Ben, who leads Cloud Security. That was not very enthusiastic, Ben. Okay, again, one more time. This is a fictitious Twilio customer, and we've called them Owl Inc. because Twilio loves owls, we just do. And Owl Inc. runs their infrastructure in the cloud. And you might also recognize the characters in this story because you're all security people. We dressed them up a little bit, but this is Alice and Bob. And Alice and Bob are using Owl Inc. to communicate while Alice is traveling overseas looking for jobs. What's OwlInc? OwlInc is just a social networking tool that uses Twilio. It enables people to post and receive SMS messages without using data while abroad. This is good, saves money. This is Alice's first trip overseas, and she is very excited. Well, one morning, Bob receives a text message from Alice, and she was asking for $5,000. Hey, I lost my wallet. Can you wire me $5,000? Along with instructions on where to wire it. Naturally, Bob wants to help his daughter. She's abroad, she has no money, she's looking for work. Let's do this. So he wires the money to Alice, or so he thinks. And the next time Alice and Bob speak, he mentions the wire transfer. And not only did Alice not receive the money, but she never asked for it in the first place. That's a problem. So Bob panics because he's out $5,000. So he contacts the support channel, and they said, shoot, this is the third incident of this type of OwlInc's customers. So this support ticket has Bob's messages that appear to be from Alice asking for this money. Charles, you lead security monitoring and incident response. Can you start the investigation?
Sure thing, Coleen. As a security incident response investigator, the first thing you want to do is to list the facts of the investigation. So let's go over the facts. First, we know that there's a OwlInc support ticket from Bob, which states the fact that a text message was received asking for $5,000. Audience, I'm going to need your help here. So what should we do next? Where should we go to look for further information? I heard it, application logs. These are an example of the OwlInc application logs. Nothing seems to stand out. You can see in the first message, howdy, I just arrived. In the second message, boy, it's amazing here. Very normal messages. In addition, these signatures are different and valid. So let's continue looking to see what we can find. So here's another set of logs, another day, another conversation. We can see that Alice additionally sends 2 more text messages, or so we think. We have, hey, I lost my wallet. In addition, we have, can you wire $5,000 here? You can also see that the signatures here are the same, which causes me some concern. How is someone able to replay these particular signatures? How are they able to understand the communication history between Bob and Alice? So let's figure out who had access to these application logs. So the next step, let's look at the access logs. So before we go any further, let's reiterate the facts that we know to date. We have verified that Bob received a text message from, supposedly, Alice requesting $5,000. We have also verified that there is signatures being possibly replayed. So looking at these access logs, something jumps out right off the back. We have non-production IPs hitting these resources using an IAM key called mark signal. I have new concerns now that the IAM key may have been compromised. So after additional analysis, the IR team determines that the key was created for a special conference application. The key's purpose was just to have access to the marketing resources. However, this key seems to have more access than necessary. So let's figure out why it has access, the unnecessary access. Let's take a look at the access policy. All right, audience, I'm going to need your support one more time. Is there anything glaring about this particular policy that we should call out for? I mean, I'm just saying, anything glaring? It's a wrecking ball. Wrecking ball. I will take that answer. As you can see here, this particular policy has star, which is effective as running root within the environment of your application and of your platform. We believe that this application was compromised and that the keys were extracted and used in an appropriate manner. So now that we got all the facts situated, let's put the attack chain in together.
Hi. I was busy, but I'm back. They fixed something with my lanyard, so it should be less noisy. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So he said attack chain. And what do security people mean when we say attack chain? We have a lot of jargon, and some people are like, blah, 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 security person said something again. Attack chain is just the chain of events that have occurred leading up to the compromise. That's really all we mean. We're just putting the story together. Okay, so back to our characters, Alice and Bob. So it's not just Alice and Bob, as you may have guessed. Through her reconnaissance scanning, Eve finds a poorly secured conference app from Outlink. She compromises the site, and although there's not much useful data, she does find some IAM keys. Very handy. And then she learns that the IAM keys have too much access. It's fantastic for somebody who's looking around. And through that access, she was able to locate data in the logs such as webhook URLs, their previous conversations, old signatures she was able to reuse, and webhook URLs. She was able to put all of this together to impersonate Alice, which is terrible. So she sends a request to Owl Inc. webhooks pretending to be Twilio with a message to Bob. Hey, I lost my wallet. Send me $5,000. Seems so easy. It's because they made it easy for her. So this is a really disturbing thing, and you're thinking, how do I prevent this type of thing from happening? Well, I guess before we get to that point, we're thinking about the issues that caused it. There were multiple, but we can kind of group them again. So we've grouped them. This first group is application security issues. First thing that happens is Eve was able to compromise a marketing site and find the AIM keys. And so most of you know, if you're a security person, you probably review applications that people create. You probably look at the designs. Maybe you do pen tests. Maybe you do scans of code. But it's not just R&D or engineering who build and deploy apps anymore. Other departments are doing this as well. The problem with this is we, as security practitioners, mainly focus on apps that are built by our R&D teams. And we miss apps that are built by other teams, and they've been operating for how long, and we have a blind eye. That's really bad. Because nobody's been looking at it, because nobody's been training those developers, these apps probably can be easily compromised. They're easy targets. And that's what happened to Owl Inc. So what could we have done from an AppSec perspective? So we're looking at it from this side of the program. Well, the first thing that we could have done, we've covered already, is to treat these apps as we would any other production service. What does that mean? That means patching systems regularly, performing security reviews, threat models, educating developers, and really all other AppSec type activities that you would do for your R&D apps.
So, as you may have guessed by this point, Owl Inc. is based in Amazon Web Services, and Owl Inc. loves AWS almost as much as Twilio does. So a lot of our examples today are going to be AWS specific, but most of the things we talk about are valid regardless of what particular type of environment you're in. So once Eve had compromised these IAM keys, she used them to access sensitive data. And there are three things that we could have done to have mitigated this stage of her attack. The first is defining strong access policies, as you may have guessed. Who can tell me why the first policy wasn't brilliantly secure, or strong for that matter? Yep. Wrecking ball policy, absolutely. Make sure when you're creating IAM and access policies, you're creating them from the basis of least privilege. This means you're only provisioning permissions to resources that they need permissions for. Second, using IAM roles as opposed to static access keys. IAM roles are an Amazon concept which you can apply to servers as well as to users. When we apply them to servers, we don't need to deploy static keys to roles. We can simply apply policies to server instances. Behind the scenes, Amazon is actually deploying keys to these machines and rotating them automatically. Therefore, if they are compromised, they're only valid for a very short window of time. Third and finally, restricting resource access to sensitive data through network security controls. If you're in Amazon's VPC or virtual private cloud, you can now use VPC endpoints for things like sensitive S3 buckets, and then put put access policies onto those buckets to ensure they're only accessible within your infrastructure. This means even if the keys are compromised to access that machine or that bucket, they're not able to be used anywhere outside of your infrastructure.
So what could we have done from a security monitoring and incident response perspective? Eve was able to access the logs undetected. Well, one thing we could do is definitely monitor the access logs. If we had a simple policy that would have identified our production IPs versus non-production IPs, we would have seen an unauthorized user accessing these resources.
Okay, so the last step in the attack chain was that Eve was able to impersonate Alice and send rogue messages to Bob. First, she learned about the prior communication between Alice and Bob, and then she was able to hijack messages into their conversation. Clearly, this is very serious. Clearly, there are red flags in the application. So, as we have seen in Charles's slides, the all-ink application was logging customer communication messages. Such messages usually contain private and confidential information. So always try to not log such messages. Don't put them into logs. Another thing that he was able to find from the logs was that was the signature that Twilio webhooks are sending. Again, that's a bad idea. We know that HTTP headers often contain sensitive data. Never log HTTP headers, or if you have to log them, make sure to strip out the sensitive parts from it before logging. Actually, all right. But the part that the biggest thing that the application failed at most and failed miserably is that the all-link application didn't verify the Twilio webhook signature. That's the X-Twilio signature. You see, when you don't do this, anyone in the world can send messages to your endpoints and pretend to be Twilio. So I want to stress this. It's critical to verify the authenticity of Twilio webhook requests. And Twilio SDK does it for you by default, so try leveraging it. So this concludes the steps in our attack chain. Let's now talk about some key takeaways. And I'll start with AppSec. So I'm going to talk about some methods that help building security in your products at different stages of the company. I will start with startups. We know that often startup companies don't have enough time to focus on security. And it's understandable. It's just the reality. But there is one thing that you can do to ensure that you're still invested in security without spending too much energy on it. See, when you start building a product, the security of your product is directly correlated to the security background of your tech lead. If your tech lead didn't ever build a security software or doesn't know how to build security into the software, you're going to end up with no security architecture most of the time. So it's important to hire a person who has a security background because they will make sure to put the security foundation into the product from the very beginning. And this is going to save huge time for you in the future. And if you can't find such person, which let's admit it's not very easy, you can always hire a hands-on security engineer as a consultant. And she will make sure to periodically review the architecture and the code and make sure everything is right. So as the company starts scaling, there is a need for a dedicated application security team. But often, typically the way it works is there is a huge number of developers, and there's like a tiny AppSec team. Like let's say there are 200 developers and one AppSec engineer. Clearly, this one person won't be able to have like a big impact on the product. How do you scale that then? What we learned at Twilio is that the concept of security champions works very well. So what is this? We haven't invented this concept. It's being practiced in other companies in the industry. But the way it works is that all product teams have a developer who is passionate about security. Like they are passionate, exciting, and they want to learn more. So security team works with this person, the champion. And over time, this person takes over and leads the security of that product line. So security team works with champions, and champions work with product teams, and this scales very well. Another thing we learned at Twilio is that doing in-depth threat models together with developers may be very useful. The way we do is we take a full day off, go into offsite, and both security team and the product team work together. Like they brainstorm through entire day. They discuss the architecture, go very deep there, and they also discuss like the attack vectors, threats, and so on. This is very useful because developers at the end learn about the business security risks, their priorities, which is very important. And then they start thinking as attackers and defenders as well. So highly recommend it. And the last but not least, look, application security is difficult. There are many areas that you need to cover. At Twilio, we are using BSIMM to measure our maturity. It helps us understand where we stand compared to other companies, other similar companies in the industry, which might be more mature, right? So it also helps us to understand what our strengths are and weaknesses are, and think about this in a systemized way, and invest in all the areas equally. So this is all I had about AppSec.
So key takeaways from a security monitoring and incident response perspective. Start off by doing it right. At Twilio, we took the time to actually develop our security incident response plan, identify what a security incident is by understanding your risk. And within your organization, you're best equipped to identify what are the risks that you're willing to take and how and what personnel you need to actually respond when those events actually take place. Define log standards. So one of the things that has been interesting at Twilio is that we've actually taken a step to standardize the log data that we receive. This allows us and our team to better actively react to incidents and having the proper data elements available in a system or platforms where we can actively search, query, graph, and do other interesting stuff with the data. So it's one thing to have a security incident response plan, to have the standards identified and implemented, but you actually have to turn logging on. This is consistent within the example we use as the AWS platform. So having CloudTrail on, S3 access logs turned on and receiving. In addition, host logs, host application logs for your platforms. Make sure that all those things are actually logging properly and are turned on. Centralize the logs. Centralizing logs can be different for the type of application you're using, whether you're looking at host-based applications, the application for the platform, AWS logs, but take the time to actually centralize the logs that are needed to identify the risk within your organization and respond to the risk within your organization. Once you have the logs centralized, start having your team instrument through the logs. Understand what's normal behavior within your enterprise. Talk with your application teams. Do the threat models, as David mentioned, to understand what logs would help support an incident when it's actually called upon.
Thank you. So when it comes to securing your cloud infrastructure, there are just 3 things that I want you to take away from today. First, one of the greatest advantages of being in a cloud environment is access to the APIs that let you describe and modify what is in those environments. Use those to your advantage to collate metadata on all of your resources, no matter how many accounts, environments, or services you're using. Collect all of this information around security policies, around servers, around accounts, what they are and who owns them. Pull that all into a single queryable pane of glass. Second, build automation. As you're starting out, use tools like Chef or Puppet to configure templates and standardize server instances, then use these to roll out your servers. As you scale, do this for your entire environment and infrastructure. Use tools like CloudFormation and Terraform to automate everything in your infrastructure. As a security person, why do I care so much about automation? It's because when you're building things from these standardized templates, it means you only need to audit them and secure them and harden them once. It means you don't have to audit and review thousands or tens of thousands of servers to make sure they're all secure. You can build everything from a standard template and then automatically identify any drift from that standard configuration. And finally, protect access to your infrastructure. And there's a number of things you should be doing in this respect. First of all, segregate your accounts. At the very minimum, segregate between testing, development, and production accounts. Within your production environments, segregate out sensitive or high-risk resources so that if a single account or environment is compromised, it limits the blast radius. I know we've brought up IAM and access permissions quite a bit already today, but the reason we emphasize it so much is because I can guarantee you it's easier to do this right now, today, than it will be for you to do this in a few years' time. We've learned this the hard way. So get it right. Use tools like, if you're in AWS, you can use tools like Access Auditor to look at users and roles and actually see what permissions they really need as opposed to what they have. Do the same thing at the network level. Restrict services so that they can only communicate with resources and services they need to communicate with. And finally, wherever your users are directly impacting or accessing infrastructure, make sure you secure that with strong authentication like two-factor. If you can, minimize this manual intervention. Every time you manually intervene in a production environment, you're potentially making it less secure. Again, use metadata and tools to aggregate all this user information, or use federated identity, as in Dom and Jeff's talk earlier, to pull all these users into a single pane of glass so you can manage them and see them all from one place. So, as Coleen mentioned at the very start of this talk, we quite frequently are asked by customers or users of Twilio, who are, especially those that are just starting out, how to go about securing a cloud environment. Probably because as a company, we've been in the cloud for a very long time now. And there are a lot of great tools that help you do this. I know, in fact, a number of companies are here today who have open sourced some really cool tools that we use internally at Twilio. But we found when we were going about creating our own security frameworks and standards, there wasn't much in the public domain which was holistic yet still highly relevant to securing infrastructure in public clouds. So that's why today we want to share something with the community. An open source cloud security framework. This is a roadmap or a guidebook which we developed when we were creating our own internal security standards. It's based around these 5 principles that we think are somewhat common sense, but they're important to keep in mind as you're trying to secure infrastructure without impacting the velocity of your organization. Again, they're around building strong and consistent metadata, creating defense in depth, automation, visibility, and security through automation and automated compliance checking. This is something that we wanted to build so that companies, no matter what their size or current security maturity, could adopt. And rather than a single tool or even a set of tools, it's more of a set of principles, objectives, and examples which cover off all of the different cloud security domains. We're really excited to announce this is available today. So we would really love your feedback, thoughts, and input. Thank you very much.
Lovely stuff.
And I'm not sure whether we're doing a minute or so for questions or whatnot.
Yeah. If there are questions, we're happy to meet with all of you either outside here. Alternatively, we're at some of the booths, but we're going to be here all day, both days. Come find us. You can talk to any of the security people or find any of the salespeople, track us down. Thanks.